Everyone, to the Week 5 Fantasy Football review show here. We're just going to go over the 5 matchups and go over some injuries and things like that and see where we're at here in Week 5 of the season and moving forward into next week in Week 6. So, taking a look at the first matchup, it was myself here, the longest yard, versus Pat's team. Unfortunately, we got our third loss in a row, moving us down to 1-4. It was a very close overall matchup. Just some unfortunate. Looking at my team, you could tell everybody had double digits. There wasn't too many underperformances from the team. Everybody either hit their projection or went above it, except for Jordan Love fell just a little shy of his projection. Jalen Hurts was on a bye week, so really didn't have much in terms of being able to play a different quarterback than Jordan Love, and wasn't too disappointed in that. I would say slight disappointment in CD. Right there, difference of 10 points in his projection of 21 versus only having 11. I think Jalen Tolbert having the game that he had took away a little bit from CD's volume. So that was a little bit of a disappointment. As far as the bench goes, I could have perhaps started Zay Flowers, who last week didn't have a great week, so that's kind of why I benched him. But he had wound up putting 20 this week. And Trey Sermon, who was filling in for Jonathan Taylor, perhaps could have put him in place of Kenneth Walker. Might have been an extra few points there. So overall, not necessarily disappointed with the lineup I set. Still getting 142 points, good enough that amount of points would have beaten majority of these teams in this league this week. It was just an unfortunate circumstance in terms of the scheduling and the matchup that I had against Pat's team, who had the second most points on the week, only to George, who had 175. So he had a fantastic lineup this week and really lucked out with Garrett Wilson having 30.1 points and Drake London 34.4, both their season highs. So I think those two performances, almost 70 points between the two of those players, is really what drove Pat's performance and his team to 152 points. If they were really just around their projections of 14-15, then I would have taken the dub this week. So that's fantasy football in a nutshell for you. Sometimes you just get unlucky with like the matchups and everything in terms of points. So not much I could really do about it. And you can look at Pat's bench. He has some injuries, some bye weeks, things like that for some players. So nothing too much there either to necessarily change. So moving on to this matchup between Darshan, who's with me at 1-4, and currently last in the league. Did get over the 100-point hump this week, but that's kind of back-to-back weeks where I think last week he only had like 99 points. Didn't get over the hump. This week he barely got over the hump by just 1.86 points. So Darshan, I have a matchup against you this week, so looking forward to that. Hopefully I can get back into the winning column there. Big blow up from Georgia's team, had the highest amount of points, 175. I think that's the second best on the season to myself. Week 2, I had 193 and 193 points, my only win this year. And George taking home the dub, and now is one of two teams joining Brad at 4-1 overall in the league. So congrats to you, George. It looks like from looking at your team, Jamar Chase was a huge reason why you got to 175, 42.3. So that's massive from Chase. Kyler Murray, 25.1. Don't want to overlook that. That's a great performance from a QB. Looking at his team, Tucker Kraft, again, massively outperformed his projection of 10.6 points. I think that was a last-minute pickup from George, too, because he had been starting Munt, who was TJ Hawkinson's replacement there on the Vikings team. So that's massive for George to get those performances from Kyler, from Jamar, and from Tucker Kraft there, leading him to get 175 points in the dub. As far as his bench and injuries, Jonathan Taylor, he had a bench because he was hurt, and I had Trey Sermon filled in for him. I think in terms of TJ Hawkinson, he should be back soon. Malik Neighbors also has been banged up and hurt, missing a couple games. I'm hoping for George that he's going to be back soon for him. You can see some really good performances here from the very tail end of George's bench. Chase Brown, 16.4. Raheem Shaheed has been killing it in the long game in terms of you might only have 3, 4, 5 catches a game, but the guy's getting these 60, 70, 80-yard touchdown catches. So massive bench piece for George to fill in during those bye weeks for other players on his starting nine. And Rico Dowdle, I think he had just picked up. He is a Cowboys fan, so it doesn't shock me that he picked up Dowdle instead of Sermon. But 19.4 points has really kind of taken over that lead back job in Dallas, I would say, from Zeke. Zeke still gets some touches, but I would say Rico definitely is the RB1 there. He's probably not putting up 19.4 necessarily per week. You see his projection was 10.6, which is probably more so what he's going to put up week to week, 10, 11, 12 points. But 19.4 definitely was a surplus there. But ultimately, those three players impact George's performance this week. He still wound up getting the blowout win. Let's take a look at Darshan's team, though, and why he's kind of struggling here. So Devon Achane and that Dolphins offense still is just not really clicking right now without Tua. Devon Achane, 16.1 projected points, low scoring game, 15-10, and only had 2.7. Might have even gotten hurt in the game and had to leave the game, so not great from Devon Achane to help Darshan out. Looking at Andre Ishuvas, there probably could have been some better pickups off the waiver wire for Darshan to pick up at wide receiver instead of Ishuvas. I'm not sure why he picked up a guy with a 6.5 projection. Might have had one good game this year, but 4.9 points, that's a big detriment. 7.9 from Jerome Ford, and only 3 points from his kicker. So those sort of performances really hindered Darshan this week. It would have been tough anyways to even beat a team, even if his starting nine was clicking on all cylinders. It would have been tough to beat George, who had 175 points. And then he's dealing with a lot of injuries and bye weeks. So A.J. Brown been hurt, also on a bye. Joe Mixon hurt, couldn't play. Alec Pierce would have been somebody. Obviously, he could have plugged and played. Geno, 22. So those two guys would have been the only recommendation this past week in hindsight to have started. Also would have not made that much of a difference in terms of winning or losing. He still probably would have lost, but it would have given him a little bit more points this week, and the loss wouldn't have looked as bad. Moving on to Coach D, Barry's team versus Derek's team. So Barry now drops down to 7th in the league, 2-3, the only 2-3 team in the league now, I believe. Derek moves to 3-2 with the other 4 or 5 other teams. A lot of teams are 3-2 in the league right now. But Derek, with the most points for in the league, has the tiebreaker all of those and is currently 3rd. He gets the 130.54 to 114.38 victory this week. Looking at both of their teams, I would say the out of the ordinary thing for Barry's team, Debo, bit of a letdown for Barry. Only 3 points, had projected to be at 17, is usually good for that, 13, 14 point floor and has a massive ceiling of 30, 40 points. So only 3 is a massive disappointment there. Positively speaking, though, here, Mark Andrews, who's been putting up some donuts, had 9.5. So that's at least some positivity for Barry's team. And then Marvin Harrison Jr., again, also a bit of a disappointing performance this week. Only 5.6 fantasy points, was projected to have 16.3. As far as looking at his bench, he has some guys on buys and people hurt. Pacheco's still hurt. Amon-Ra, one of Barry's starting 9 best wide receivers on his team, was out for a bye week. Dallas Goedert, his best tight end, out on a bye week. And then as far as the rest of the bench, nothing really to note there. Looking at Derek's team, pretty much everybody had double digits outside of Zach Ertz, who only had 3 points. So the only recommendation to Derek's team would have been to find somebody else a little bit better to start at tight end. Evan Ingram is his usual starting tight end, I believe, but is hurt right now, so Ertz is kind of just filling in for the time being. Wound up not hurting Derek, still got the dub, but that definitely would be something to maybe take a look at here moving forward off the waiver wire. Maybe drop Zach Ertz and replace him with somebody else better at tight end. Other than that, nothing else really to note that much from the bench. Everybody in his starting 9 did their job enough to get Derek the win this week. And moving forward, he should still be within that conversation of being in a top 4 team, certainly in this league. Last 2 matchups here, we got Group A. Our partner was my buddy Joey. He's one of the 3-2 teams now, as is John. Like I said, there's a handful of them now in the league. Joey's currently sitting at 5th on tiebreakers, and John at 4th. John actually wound up getting blown out here a little bit this week. 33-point deficit is something worthy to note, especially considering looking at Joey's team. I mean, he had single-digit performances from Antonio Gibson, only 6.6 points, DK Metcalf, 8.5, and Deontay Johnson, 5.9. Big, strong performances, though, from the likes of Bo Nix, 23.14 points, somebody that Joey wound up just picking up since Anthony Richardson is currently hurt right now. So that was a last-minute add, I believe, from Joey's team. So he performed really well from this week, as did Mike Evans, 23.2 points, and Brock Bowers, who's been a stellar rookie tight end for the Raiders on an offense that isn't all that great right now, but is really receiving extra work and extra volume with the likes of Devontae Adams being out and the trade stuff going on, with, trade rumors with Devontae Adams, and then Jacoby Myers banged up, and just overall earning more targets there in that Raiders offense. Not to mention his kicker, Butker, got 13 points, and then the Bears defense got 17. So really it's just the running back of Gibson, wide receiver Metcalf, and wide receiver Deontay Johnson that kind of let Joey down a little bit, still on getting the 33-point win. As for John's team, some big disappointments definitely came from Olave, only 3 points against the Chiefs, especially in a game in which the Saints were down most of the game. You think Derek Carr would have been throwing the ball a lot more, especially Olave's way. But wound up only getting 3 points there, so that's a massive disappointment. Josh Allen, 14.64 points. Really, Josh Allen's usually good for 20, 25 points at the minimum per week, so that's a bit of a disappointment. And then George Pickens, 5.6. I can tell you firsthand as a Steelers fan, it just was not a great week for our offense or for George Pickens. Browns defense, 4 points. So those kind of performances, the defense and the two wide receivers, Pickens and Olave, were a driving factor as to why John was not able to get the dub this week. As far as his bench is concerned, it doesn't look like anybody there necessarily would have been the game-changing piece to John getting the win this week. So nothing really to note there. Same with Joey's team. Nothing here really to note too much on the bench, other than that Tyreek finally got back to double digits. He had been in the single digits for a while, but just not really living up yet to his first-round talent without Tua. So that goes for pretty much all the Dolphins at this point in time. Last matchup here, we have Brad's team, who is currently first on tiebreakers for point. Him and George both the only 4-1 teams in the league. And Alex joins myself and Darshan at 1-4, and he's currently 9th. Close week there, 128 to 112. One of the lower performances from Brad's team. He's been good for usually 135, 140 points on average. Not a bad performance from Alex's team, considering everything, which we'll go over here in a moment. But to start with Brad's team, Lamar has just been absolutely killing it this year. 35 points from him, definitely QB1. You have Kyron, 17.5. A little bit of a disappointing performance from Jordan Mason this week, 9.8 points. You can see there. Aaron Jones, 6.3, also a disappointing week. I think he got injured, though, in that London game for the Jets-Vikings, so he had to come out. And then the Ravens defense in that high-scoring overtime thriller between them and the Bengals, 1 point there. So had those three pieces on his starting 9 would have done a little bit better. That definitely would have given Brad even more of a victory, a larger victory, rather. Looking at his bench, a lot of things to talk about on his bench here. So Christian McCaffrey still out on IR, but he has Jordan Mason there to fill in the meantime. Devontae Adams, who was drafted as probably wide receiver 1 or 2 for this team. Is still kind of in an injury situation / trade rumor situation. So there's a lot going on with Devontae Adams. It's very unclear at the moment when he'll return. Cooper Kupp's hurt and out, might come back and start practicing soon. So that would be a good resumption for him, especially because week 1 he had 33 points. So there will definitely be volume for him there when he does return, especially with Puka still hurt. And then Sam Darnold kind of didn't have a great week for Brad. It didn't hurt him because he had him on his bench, but 6 points there is not great. And then looking over, lastly, here at Alex's team, had Fields fill in, didn't really hurt him. Najee 9.7, Zach Moss 8.2. Big disappointing performance from Juwan Jennings, especially given the injuries to San Francisco wide receivers lately, and George Kittle's been banged up. Like, would have thought Juwan Jennings would have had a better performance. Dontavian Wicks as well has been pretty good so far as a second or third wide receiver for the Packers. So those two guys as wide receiver 2s, 3 flex options. It just were disappointments there for Alex's team. Looking at his bench, you can see Patrick Mahomes has not been really living up to his talent. I don't even think he's had a single game yet this season where he's broke 20, and if he has, it's been once. So really been disappointing this season so far. Devontae Smith on a bye week and also been hurt. The only thing for Alex from Ramondre Stevenson wound up having 19.2 points. Plug him in instead of maybe Moss or Harris or even Dontavian Wicks. Maybe that would have given him the dub this week. Would have been close, but that's the only thing really to note here on Alex's team. So that's the recap of Week 5. Looking forward here real quick. So let's go over the standings. So we have the full breakdown of standings. Brad number 1 with a 4-1 record. So there you go, 4-1. George 4-1. Derek 3-2. John 3-2. Joey 3-2. Pat 3-2. Barry the only 2-3 team, and then myself, Alex, and Darshan all 1-4. Here's the breakdown of all the points for, points against, tiebreakers, things like that. So the tiebreaker does go off of points for. If you have the most points for, but have a similar record to everybody else, you'll be ahead of them. So that's why Brad's on top here with 665. George right behind him with 646. And then so on and so forth. Myself, I currently still hold the most points for overall in the league, even though being 1-4. So you could you could tell with my team, like, yeah, most points for and putting up a lot of points, but just haven't had the luck with the matchup so far. It really is so far a team that should be at the worst 2-3, but really should be like 3-2 at this point. But we'll see what'll happen moving forward. We're only 5 weeks in, 14-week regular season, so still got a lot of season left to go here, and the top 8 teams make the playoffs. So we'll see what'll happen there. Looking forward to the schedule. Let's take a look at that for Week 6 here. So Week 6, right there. So myself this week, 1-4 against Darshan, 1-4. Hopefully you can pull out the dub this week. Darshan has had back-to-back 199 and 101 point performances. So any given week, his team can finally rebound and go off. Hopefully that's not this week. But given my luck lately, I've been going up against people's teams and their players having their best performances. So hopefully that's not the case this week, and hopefully we can pull out the W. George versus John, 4-1 versus 3-2. Second place versus, I believe, fourth place in the league. So that's a great matchup right there. Pulling for John to hopefully get the W. Then we have Pat's team versus Derek's team. Again, 2-3-2 teams, both kind of in the middle of the standings at the moment. That would be a close one. Too close for me to call. Pat just beat me with 152 points, so there could be some regression there. And Derek, I think, had 130-some points this week, so that could be anyone's. That's a real toss-up. I'll just give the slight edge at the moment. I'll give it to Pat's team. He has a little bit more depth and talent on his team, so I'll give the slight edge to Pat. And then the last 2 matchups, we have Joey 3-2 versus Brad 4-1. Definitely pulling for Joe's team. Brad still has a lot of injuries and people out, like McCaffrey, Adams, Cooper Kupp, etc. So if Joe's team remains healthy and if Bo Nix can continue to have that strong performance, filling in for Anthony Richardson, who's hurt on Joe's team, then I think Joe can pull out the win. And then last but not least, we have Barry 2-3 versus Alex 1-4. That'll be a close one too, closer than what a lot of people think. I do think Barry's team overall is stronger on paper, but Alex's team week to week can be really sneaky. Despite being 1-4, again, the record doesn't always necessarily reflect how good a team is or isn't. So I'll give the slight edge though to Barry, and I think he'll just pull out a small victory this week over Alex's team. So that's the recap again of Week 5 and looking forward ahead to Week 6. Hope everyone enjoyed the review show and matchup analysis, and look forward to talking to you all next week. Let's have a great week. See ya.